Welcome, everybody. I have with me a friend of mine, Mr. Lee Taylor, who is a local saxophonist and has been playing in the Albuquerque area for many, many years. Welcome, Lee. Thank you very much for joining me.
Hello.
So let's talk about a couple of things that I find interesting about you in particular, because you're from Albuquerque, right?
Correct.
You graduated from Manzano High School. And so when was that? What year did you graduate?
I graduated in 1985, and we had a really great band over there at Manzano High School. A lot of the musicians in that band still play today.
Right. Wasn't that with Bruce Dalby? Wasn't he your instructor?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of great musicians that are still around from Manzano, you and Milo and a few of the other ones. And what I find interesting is once you finished high school, you went to UNM and you graduated from UNM. Is that correct? With a degree in what?
Saxophone performance.
Okay. Who was your instructor? Because I don't think Glenn was here at that time, was he?
No, he got here like the day before my senior recital. That's when Glenn was doing his interview at UNM. So I played my recital review and he got to hear that. But yeah, I got a saxophone performance degree, and Keith Lemons and Greg Armstrong were my saxophone teachers in college. And in high school, I studied with John Winder.
Okay. I remember, I do remember Armstrong. So what I find interesting is that once you finished college, you chose to stay in Albuquerque, which you know, we have, I don't want to contradict myself, because we have a lot of great musicians here in Albuquerque. But back in the early 90s and in the early 2000s, there weren't a lot of opportunities for all of us. So why did you choose to make Albuquerque your home base?
Well, I have family here, and my mother lives here, my brothers and my sister. And my dad was still around then, and he was living in El Paso, which isn't too far away from here. And
Right.
I just like New Mexico. You know, I've ridden this bus for 2.5 years and got to see a lot of cool places, but I guess I miss New Mexico. And what I did is I actually left UNM and went out on the road for a couple of years, and then I came back and finished my degree. And I guess I just missed New Mexico, and when I got back here, I started building up a teaching studio with a bunch of students, and I gradually started getting gigs. But you're right, there weren't that many gigs back then. There's more now than there were in the early 90s.
Okay.
But we played together. We stayed pretty busy for a while, you and me.
Yeah.
And that your band Horizon.
Yeah, we did. We played quite a bit together. So that
was one of the first bands that I played with after I came back from the road, was your band.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. That was a lot of fun. So wait, go back, take a step back. You said you left college and you went on the road with whom? Who did you go on the road with?
The Glenn Miller Orchestra.
Oh, that's
the Glenn Miller Band for 2.5 years.
That's right. I forgot about that. You were on the road for all those years playing. You were playing lead alto. No,
well,
you were playing lead.
Playing second. I was mostly playing second. I played lead a bit there at the end, but mostly I was playing second alto and singing in the Moonlight Serenader vocal group.
That's right. That's right. I do remember that now, because I remember some of the stories you used to tell us about some of the road trips, which we're going to get to here in just a little bit. As a professional musician, right, where music is truly your livelihood, that is what you do for a living. I'm guessing that during the pandemic, that was a pretty dark time for you, right? I mean, I don't want to understate it, because no in-person gigs, no in-person music lessons, everything was done via Zoom. I'm guessing that was a pretty tough time, wasn't it?
Well, you know, it wasn't fun, that's for sure. But at the same time, you know, it was nice being able to just walk to my refrigerator and get a snack in between lessons. I stayed fairly busy teaching Zoom and Skype lessons. And I did several recording sessions with a few people. So, you know, it wasn't like I was completely shut down. I was thankful to have the chance to teach some of my students online. But yeah, in person is definitely a lot better, in my opinion.
Well, absolutely. I mean, giving a lesson giving a lesson, because I did the same thing, giving a lesson via Zoom is really, really hard. And you
It's
know
funny.
that
Yeah,
because it's hard. You can't interact the same
right.
as with a student. You can't look at the embouchure and say, okay, no, you need to do this, or you need to do that, or your fingers aren't, your fingers are slipping, or you're getting lazy with your hand position, or any of those things. And I'm sure as a trumpet player, it was tough. I can imagine being a saxophone or even a woodwind specialist, trying to teach flute via Zoom. That just seems like it would be awfully difficult.
Well, and there's just a little bit, like a split second or maybe a full second. I don't know. I didn't measure it, but there's a time delay, a little bit of a lag. So you can't play along, you can't play duets, anything like that. So they would play, I would listen, I would play, they would listen, we would go back and forth. And so we made it work, but I'm definitely happy to be back teaching online. I mean, teaching in person. I
Yes.
still offer the online lessons. I've got some out of state students that still take online, but yeah, I'm definitely happy to be back over here at Baum's teaching in person.
Baum's Music, by the way, if anyone was curious about that. And yes, Lee Taylor does teach there on a regular basis. And I will make sure that I put your website down in the comments below so that people can contact you. So you make your living teaching lessons and performing, right? So that's tough. I mean, I'm not asking you how much you make, but I'm curious, do you make a good living by just being a performer and being an instructor here in New Mexico?
Well, you have to be creative. And what I do is I play in different bands that play multiple styles. I don't just stick with one style of music. And I was leading my band there for a while, but I've gotten busy enough playing with other bands that I don't really have to manage it. I can just show up and play the saxophone, and so it's a lot more fun. And I'm in a working band now, playing with this guy Gonzalo.
So you play in a lot of different bands,
Right.
and so now I want to go back a little bit, because you said from 1990 to 1992, you toured the world performing with Glenn Miller Orchestra.
Right.
And you recorded 2 CDs with them, right? Can you
That's
tell me
correct.
about
Yep.
those
Yep.
CDs?
Well, the first one, I think they called it Moonlight Serenade, and we recorded that in December 1990, and that was a lot of fun. We recorded both CDs. Didn't have enough coffee today. With the whole band sitting in the same room, and the vocal group and the vocal solo parts were recorded after, like the day after. And so we did Moonlight Serenade, and I believe that was at Clinton Studios. And then we did Here We Go Again, was at RCA Studios in New York. And I remember it was a lunch break, and Itzhak Perlman was recording in the room next door, and he seemed a little bit agitated that we were playing hacky sack in the lobby of the studio. It was our lunch break, we didn't have to do anything.
Right. Well, that would be kind of, that's a major studio. That is, and so I'm guessing that he probably wasn't too happy with that.
He just kind of walked by and gave us this look like, what are these guys doing in here?
Killing time is what we were doing, yes. So now, you also spent some time on cruise ships, right? And riverboats?
That was with the Glenn Miller Band. We did a couple of big band cruises. We were on the SS Norway, which was the largest ship in the world at the time. And I think it's been decommissioned, is in a scrap pile somewhere now. And then we were on the Royal Viking Sun. We did 2 big band cruises. And those were great because we would do, I believe it was a 2 or maybe 3 set show. I don't remember. And but it was really great because we got passenger cabins and got to eat in the main dining room, but we could still go to the crew mess at 2 in the morning if we were still hungry or whatever. But it was a lot of fun. We got to go off on the excursions and go snorkeling and that kind of thing. So
it's still a lot of work. That was still a lot of work. I mean, it's not like you guys, I'm this now. Did you guys have guest artists, or it was just your band, just the Glenn Miller Band being featured?
The Royal Viking Sun cruise, it was just the Glenn Miller Band. But when we were on the SS Norway, that was a lot of fun because that was even more fun. They were both fun, but on the SS Norway, it was the Glenn Miller Band. Larry O'Brien led that, and then it was the Tommy Dorsey Band led by Buddy Morrow, and then it was the Les Elgart band and the Erskine Hawkins band. But I believe both of those bands were really the same band out of Miami, but just two different books.
Oh, okay.
But the Glenn Miller band and the Tommy Dorsey band, we played alternating nights. So we would play one night, and the next night we would just get to hang out and listen to the other band. And there was two bands, one on each side of the ship. And of course, the Glenn Miller band and the Tommy Dorsey band were in the main outdoor bar in the back. And so we would play every other night. And so every other night we could just kind of hang out and listen, and it was a lot of fun.
Okay. And now, do you remember what riverboat you? Because I think I remember reading in your resume that you also played on a riverboat. Was that also the Glenn Miller band?
The Mississippi Queen and the Delta Queen. We did that, and that there was a lot less to do actually during the day on that boat. Mostly we would just sit around and maybe we'd play shuffleboard, or mostly we just drank.
Well, they're not as big. Those are things that are like an eighth of the size of a cruise ship. I mean,
yeah, they didn't have as many activities for the passengers during the day either. So the cruise ships were more fun. But I was happy to be able to do that. It was a great photo opportunity to be able to take photos of the Mississippi River and everything.
Right. I've seen both ships down in New Orleans. So I've seen, and they're, like I said, they're not very big, but they sure are fun to be on.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
So now you have performed with a lot of big names. I mean, you have performed with a lot of big names. Is there any one in particular that sticks out above all the others? I mean, I know you've played with Bobby Shew, and I know you've played with, oh shoot, you did Telluride not too long ago. Who did you do Telluride with?
Oh, that was fun. That was last summer with Tito Puente Jr.
That's right, Tito Puente Jr. So tell me some names of people you have played with, and tell me which one sticks out the most. Which one was the most interesting to play with?
Well, I don't know if one stands out more than any other. I played with the Temptations and the Four Tops and the OJs. Bernadette Peters. That was one that's memorable. I remember watching her when I was a kid on that TV, that movie, The Jerk, with Steve Martin. Well, I got called to play. It was the Santa Fe Symphony plus a saxophone section, and it was at the Santa Fe Opera. We played with Bernadette Peters, and about halfway through the show, it starts to rain, and the rain is blowing in sideways. It's blowing really hard, and she's soaking wet and wearing a nice little black dress, And I look at the next chart, and it says tacit. I don't have to play. And so she climbs up on the piano, and she lays across the piano and sings Fever. And I'm sitting right there going, wow, this might be not just the highlight of my musical career, but maybe my life. I don't know.
Well, that's actually pretty cool, because I'll tell you what.
I remember that quite well.
I bet you do. So you play lead tenor for the AJO, the Albuquerque Jazz Orchestra here in town, but you also play with, like, as you said before, you've branched out. You play everything. You play jazz, you play blues, you play rock, you play Latin. I've seen you play 50s music, as you said, with Temptations and the OJs. What other, tell me some of the groups that you play on a regular basis here in town.
Well, right now, like I said, I play with the Albuquerque Jazz Orchestra, and we play the first Tuesday night of every month at Dirty Bourbon, so it's nice to have that place to play since the Cooperage closed. And I play with Gonzalo. That band keeps me pretty busy playing between, we go back and forth a lot between Albuquerque and Denver. We just kind of go up and down I-25, and we play mostly in northern New Mexico and southern Colorado. And I'm in Entourage Jazz, which is a fun group with Emerson Corley, and we've got a Louisiana tour planned for October. We're going to play in Lake Charles, Lafayette, and New Orleans, so that'll be fun. Mm-hmm. And everything else is just pretty much freelance. Somebody will give me a call, and if I have the night open, I'll play. Okay. So
Gonzalo, what type of music is that?
That's New Mexico Spanish music. It's a lot different than jazz. So it's Spanish music mixed with polka and maybe some rock and country and some funky kind of elements and everything. And it's a lot of fun because you see all generations, from little kids all the way up to great grandparents, all singing along because they all know all the tunes, and it's really great. So we play for very large audiences, and it's always a family event, the things that we play usually, except for the casino. You can't bring kids to the casino.
That's fine. I used to play with Roberto Griego, who
you know about that scene.
I know exactly about that scene. I mostly see you play tenor. You play a lot of tenor saxophone whenever I'm seeing you, but I also know that you play all the saxophones and you play clarinet and you play flute. Do
Right.
you, I'm guessing that tenor though is your favorite instrument to gig on. Is that correct?
That's true. I don't know how it turned out that way because I was mostly an alto player all the way through college. And it wasn't really until after I graduated college that I sort of got serious with practicing the tenor. And I think part of that was the bands that were playing the tenor kind of fit the sound of what they were playing a little bit more than the alto. And but I also play soprano sax and flute and clarinet, and so I've added those doubles over the years. What happened was in high school, Bruce Dalby was my band director, and we had a lot of really good players in that band, and there was a lot of good saxophone players. And one of the saxophone players played bassoon, another one played clarinet, another one played flute, and but we still had an overabundance of saxophone players at Manzano High School. So I started playing bass clarinet. It actually wasn't the bass clarinet; it was the contralto clarinet, which is larger than the bass. And there were no parts written for it, so I got tuba parts, and I would have to read the tuba parts, the bass clef tuba parts, as if I was reading a treble clef part, and then put 3 sharps on the key signature. And that was all good until I got to accidentals, and then I'd have to figure out that. So I realized that what Bruce Dalby was doing at the time, he knew I was going to be a music major in college, so he was just giving me a little bit of an extra music theory exercise to go with band practice every day. Plus, he knew that I would have to double at some point in time if I was serious about being a musician. So I remember after that going to Pond City and getting a Bundy clarinet for like $30 or whatever, an old plastic thing. The pads were falling out, and I was playing on that for a while, and got that fixed up. And then I grabbed my sister's flute and borrowed that for a while, and started taking some flute lessons with my saxophone teacher, John Winder. He plays Broadway shows now, and he's one of the top doublers in New York there. And I'm able to play the shows. If somebody calls me, hey, we need somebody to play tenor sax, but you have to double on flute or clarinet. I played a show one time. I can't remember the guy's name. He was a Frank Sinatra tribute artist, and we played at the Route 66 Casino, which is like 45 minutes away from my house. And I was told, okay, I'm going to be playing clarinet and tenor sax. I said, it's a Frank Sinatra show. Are you sure there's no flute? And the guy that hired me said, no flute, just tenor and clarinet. Okay. And so the day before the gig, I'm looking at my calendar and I see this show coming up. So I called the guy again. Said, yeah, I just wanted to make sure, just clarinet and saxophone, no flute. And he says, no flute. And I said, okay. So I drive 45 minutes to the casino. I get there, I'm setting up, they're passing out the books. I open up the book, and there's the overture. The entire page is nothing but flute. And it's like, excuse me, but it's 45 minutes to my house and back. It's going to take me an hour and a half. Is there I can go get my flute if you want. The guy says, oh, don't worry about it. We'll just have the keyboard player cover it. So now I always just make sure to have the flute and the clarinet in the trunk.
Yeah, bring it just in case. You never know when you're going to need it. Now, you have done a lot of gigs. I mean, and we talked about the one with Bernadette Peters. Any other strange gigs that you've done?
Strange gigs.
Yeah, strangest gig that you've ever done. Can you think of one?
Yeah, there's a couple of them for sure. I was playing a wedding up at the La Posada Hotel one time. And people usually at weddings, the guests are on their best behavior, you would think, right? Well, we were playing, and the guests weren't really talking during dinner, and I thought that was unusual. And then we got to the part where the dance party starts, and this one guy comes over and he takes the cowboy hat off this other guy's head on the dance floor, and the other cowboy gets all puffed up and he's mad. Next thing you know, pop! These 2 guys are going at it. About 6 more dudes jump in, so there's like 8 guys all throwing down, having a fist fight. They smash up the table with the plates and the cake and the cucumber water and all that. And the security shows up, and it's a little old lady and a rather how should we put it? A guy that looks like he couldn't run across the street, much less chase anybody down. There was nothing these 2 security guards could do about this fight. A bunch of frat boy football players from Texas, right?
Uh-huh.
They were drunk. There was alcohol involved. And so they're having this giant fight. Santa Fe PD gets there, breaks it up, has all these guys in handcuffs. Then their women were yelling at each other. The women start fighting. And so more police show up, handcuff the women, and the whole thing got shut down. And this had apparently started earlier in the day. Cousins, I guess, that hadn't spoken in years for good reason, and then you add alcohol, and it was just a bad mix. And so the party was over. Oh, and it was all on the groom's side too.
Yeah, you always know that when there's fisticuffs, there's alcohol involved.
Right. And then there was another one. This one I was with the Glenn Miller Orchestra, and we were in, I think, Columbus, Ohio, or Dayton, Ohio, or no, it was Akron, I think. Anyway, it was one of those places, and we were going to have a hit and run that night, which means you play the gig and you drive all night. So the bus pulls up to this beautiful park, and the bus driver gets a hotel to the cab. So he gets a cab to the hotel, so he can sleep. And so the bus is parked there all day. We get to hang around, go shopping, and very, very hot and humid day. And we're playing the gazebo that night, which was near a lake that was on this park. So we're playing the gig that night, and we finished the first set. And after intermission, we get into our first set, and the clouds just roll in, and they're thick, dark clouds. And you can hear the freight train sound, and the promoter comes running up to us like this, stop. And so everybody's running to evacuate the park. And the rain and the hail comes down. There's a tornado that's not too far away. And so we get all the books put in the book boxes, and we're, running through the rain and the hail, putting everything back on the bus. The thing blows through. There was no damage or anything, maybe a few tree limbs broken, but nothing major. But now the concert's over, and it's way early, so the bus driver is still sleeping at the hotel, not thinking he thinks he has to be back at the bus by like 10:30 or whatever. And so we've got all this time to kill, so we're just kind of hanging around, and finally the bus driver comes back. We get into the bus. No sooner are we pulling out, boom, something hits the bus, and the bus driver and the road manager get out. And so then the whole band gets out, and a drunk taxi driver had rear-ended the bus. And it barely put a scratch on the bus, but the cab driver backs up to try to get away, and he's stuck. He's spinning his tires in the mud in the park. So our road manager goes over and reaches into the cab and pulls the keys out of the ignition. Meanwhile, somebody at the house across the street is called the police. So the police show up, and the reason that the cab driver was trying to get away, number one, he was drunk, but number two, his girlfriend was in the front seat, and she wasn't a paying passenger, so he wasn't supposed to even have her in the car. And so he was arrested for drunk driving, and we get back on the bus, and we continued on our way, and
That's actually pretty funny. I have heard stories about you meeting Dizzy Gillespie. Is that true?
That is true. I was playing in Anderson, South Carolina with the Glenn Miller Orchestra, and we had a day off. And the band leader called a rehearsal because there was a couple of new guys in the band. And so we didn't really want to have a rehearsal. We were kind of bummed. But we were staying at a Super 8 hotel. There was nowhere to rehearse. So we went to the Holiday Inn next door, and Dizzy Gillespie was checking in to the Holiday Inn with his road manager. And so our road manager reserved a conference room so we could have a rehearsal. And the band leader asked Dizzy if he would come in and listen to us rehearse. And so Dizzy agreed to listen to us rehearse one tune. And so we pull out this chart that featured a few of the guys. And so everybody's trying to play their bebop licks and everything. And we finally finished the tune. And our band leader says, "So Diz, do you have any advice for these up and coming young musicians?" And Dizzy goes, "Yeah, quit."
Oh my God! oh, I figured it was going to be something like, yeah, give you some really great advice. No, it's just quit.
And then, but he said it in a joking way, and he laughed. And the concert at the university, the Dizzy Gillespie concert, was sold out that night. So what he did is he put us all on the guest list, and they put folding chairs in the back of the auditorium. And so we got into the concert for free. And after the concert, we got to go backstage and actually meet Dizzy Gillespie and get our photos taken with him. So that was pretty cool. That was one of the highlights of being out on the road with that band, even though that wasn't an actual gig. it was just a highlight for me.
Oh, absolutely. I can understand that. I got to meet him once, a long time ago at a jazz festival in Greeley, Colorado for University of Northern Colorado. And I got to act, all I did was walk up and said, you know, Mr. Gillespie, I'm an extremely big fan. Thank you very much for everything you've done. And I walked away. You know, we didn't have cell phones and everything back then to take pictures.
Right.
Anyway, listen, I know you have a gig coming up. You've got the AJO next weekend, right, over at the Albuquerque Museum, and you've got all your other wonderful things that are coming up. Please, please, please make sure that you keep us, everybody, in the loop on Facebook, because it's always nice to know where and what you're playing.
Yeah, I post all that stuff up, yeah.
Okay, so you post all that stuff on Facebook. That is awesome. Listen, I want to thank you very, very much for joining me today. I appreciate all the work that you do. I appreciate the fact that you stay in Albuquerque and that you continue to work here in town. And let me say, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for your time. We'll see you next time.